Hello, this is Mike. Everything going all right with the setup of Bridget and Rono?
Yep, all good, Mike.
Great, thank you so much.
Jen, I'm just checking to see if I can be heard.
Hi, Janice. We can hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. Given my last efforts, I had no sound, so hopefully we've solved the problem.
Yeah, you're sounding good.
All right, terrific. Okay, I'm being heard, so I'm good. It's working.
Hey, David, do you have a radio or TV or something on in the background?
I don't think so. Let me just check here. Hold on.
Okay.
How's that?
Much better.
Good. Hi there, Antoinette.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Hey, David,
Hey, Fred.
how you doing?
Okay.
Good.
Evening, everyone.
Evening.
All right, Jeff. All right, it's 6 o'clock. I am still waiting for Commissioners Foxen and Mulford. So we'll give them a minute.
I see that Commissioner Foxen is on the call. She just has her video off.
Oh, there she is. I'm so sorry.
And I'm looking for Mike Neely, who's supposed to be joining me.
Mike's here.
Oh, he is here? Okay.
He is.
He's not showing up on my screen.
I see him.
Yep, I'm here.
All right, there you are. Now you're there.
All right, we're going to get started just because I know that people's schedules are busy these days. Welcome to the Sonoma County Library Commission meeting, December 6th. I'm going to call the roll. Commissioner Cahill,
Here.
Commissioner Elkin,
Here.
Commissioner Engbarth,
Here,
Commissioner Foxen. You have to unmute, Commissioner Foxen. I'll give you a chance to do that. Commissioner Heavenridge,
Here.
Commissioner Hauser,
Here.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Here.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Commissioner McKenzie. I'll try not to ask, just knock on something. Commissioner Mulford, I don't see you here. All right, Commissioner Parker is excused. Commissioner Schneider.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Foxen. All right. Pursuant to Cal, I'm going to say that there are 9 of us here because I haven't heard from Commissioner Foxen. But we can amend that. We can amend that later. And I would also ask all of you to be sensitive to turning your mics off just because there are so many of us here. You don't have to certainly, but be mindful of the noise as you rustle papers. Pursuant to California Code Section 54953, all votes during this teleconference meeting will be taken by roll call. Members of the public who wish to address the commission regarding matters not on the agenda should request recognition at this time. It is now the public appearance section. This is not for items that are on the agenda. This is for other items, for other matters of interest. Jen, do we have anybody from the public who has their hands up?
I'm not seeing any hand raised in our meeting today, and I did not receive any public comments for this section of the agenda.
Super, thanks very much.
Okay.
Because you hadn't answered yes to those.
Commissioner Foxen, wave if you're here. Okay, then there are 10 of us.
I'm sorry, I was having trouble
No. Oh,
working the computer. Sorry.
All right. So Commissioner
here.
Mulford, we haven't heard from Commissioner Mulford either. So there are 9 of us here. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see. The first matter on our agenda this evening is the Measure Y Oversight Committee report. Commissioner Chair Brokaw, would you like to take it over?
I would be happy to. Thank you. First of all, let me introduce myself since I'm probably a new face to most of you. I'm Janice Brokaw and I have chaired the Oversight Committee this past year. And with me tonight is Mike Neely, who is the past chair and also worked on this report with us. So I appreciate the opportunity to present this year's report to you. I apologize for pulling it at your November meeting, but we realized, or it was brought to our attention that we were in violation of the Brown Act by not approving our final draft in a public meeting. So we pulled it out and did do that. And so we are in compliance with that. I also appreciate you putting us first in your agenda so that those who need to go do other things can do that. All right, Mike, if you will put up our little slide.
Just a second, I'm having, okay. 1 second here. Okay, can you see it?
No.
Oh, I need to share my screen probably somehow. Jen, okay, wait a minute. Let's see.
Uh-oh.
There we go. Does that do it?
No, I have
Yes,
a feeling I am
yes.
totally
No.
out at the meeting. No, there I am. Oh, there we go. All right. I figured
All
there'd
good.
be some technical difficulties here, but I finally did work out the sound that was wrong with my computer. So it's nice to be able to do this from my own home office. Okay, this is just the cover for the Measure Y Oversight Committee report. So Mike, if you will Move to the next page.
Just a second. There we go. Okay.
Okay, so in this report tonight, we're going to be looking at basically 4 different things. Are the measure-wide goals that we use to determine whether an expenditure was appropriate or not for measure-wide funds. Also, the library accomplishments during this year of COVID. Mike will cover the financial summary for us. And then we'll share with you our findings and conclusions at the end of the report. And if you have any questions, if you'll hold those please to the end, we'll address those all at the end of our little mini report here. All right, Mike. Okay. The extent of Measure Y was that, or the intent of Measure Y was that monies generated from sales tax revenue would be used to support 3 basic things. The library collections and programs, so we could increase what we offer to the public, to improve access to local libraries. And this involved either adding hours or, in this year's case, adding a whole new branch. And then also to improve and maintain our aging library facilities, to improve how we do things and updating any the existing branches. This year, we also included in our report an explanation of the challenges that COVID-19 presented to library operations this year. So that was it in a nutshell. In terms of accomplishments in collections, over 1 million of Measure Y funds were used to purchase additional books and media this year. And that accounts for about 33% of the total amount spent for books and media. Because of COVID, they felt it necessary to increase our online access to newspapers. So that was also done. Oh, Mike, you skipped a few pages. Nope. Back up to accomplishments and programs. There we go. Approximately $100,000 was spent on virtual events this year and on virtual programs as our branches were closed until April of this year. And so just an example of some of the virtual type events. We love fiber arts. We did some job search workshops, some beginning Spanish classes, the botanical bus, the summer reading program was continued and also very popular. Measure Y funds were used to purchase the supplies and incentives that were given away at the end of summer. Okay. In terms of improving access, probably the biggest accomplishment for the Sonoma County Library System this year was the opening of the Roseland branch. We also added numerous more ebooks and audiobooks because of COVID and because of the need for people to be able to access things from their home computers. They also purchased additional Chrome kits and hotspots because these were items that were heavily used by the public. Okay, I think we already mentioned the Roseland Facility. This opened in September of 2021. I haven't been over yet to see it, but that's on my list of things that I want to do. The Rohnert Park branch was also painted this year, and this was a collaborative effort with the city. The city provided the paint, Measure Y funds provided the funds for the labor to do that. I'm sure you're also aware that the Sonoma County Archives had to be moved from the Los Guilicos facility out of the fire zone into a safer temporary location near the airport. So that was done, and part of that was done with Measure Y funds. Also had to provide some audio-visual upgrades to some of the community rooms. New kiosks were purchased for public printers, and these were pay stations. The public actually requested these because they wanted to be able to pay for library services with their debit or credit card. So that was the purpose of the kiosks. The Sonoma County Library, one more. The Sonoma County Library also purchased an automatic materials handling, which is a large sorter that allows the library system to sort and deliver items more quickly to the different branches. So that was the major purchase from the library system. Okay, Mike then is going to talk a little bit about the financial spending. So Mike, if you want to, there we go.
Okay, so this shows the history since the beginning of Measure Y. The Measure Y funds are in orange. As you can see, we've gone from less than $20 million spending to a little over $30 million. So Measure Y has had a measurable impact and provided a lot of resources that we wouldn't have been able to do everything without Measure Y funds. This is a history of the revenue and expenses since the beginning of Measure Y. In fact, this last year was much better than anticipated. I remember when the budget was being done and the anticipation was for much lower income. The salaries and benefits, everything has been more or less according to schedule there. We haven't had a normal year, I don't think, since we started this project. We've had 2 fires and 2 years of COVID in there. So we've shown a surplus, considerable surplus ever since the beginning, and we have now an accumulated surplus of almost $17 million. Back to you, Janice.
Oh, okay. The library, as well as this committee, had several challenges this year. One of the biggest was our inability to forecast and budget income and expenses during this time. That became a very difficult process for us. We had trouble obtaining the reports we needed without a CFO, even though we had, or the library had, someone doing their giving reports to us. I think his understanding, he didn't necessarily understand the specifics of what we needed. And so we traveled through most of the year blind until at the end of the year, we finally got the information that we needed in order to make our conclude or come to a conclusion. All right, Mike.
No, this is yours, right?
Yes, yeah, this is where we are. So the committee met, we had a small committee that worked on writing this. And then we went back to the entire committee for their approval. But there were basically 4 things that we felt needed to be changed or handled. One of them was we recommend that the budget be reviewed and adjusted on a more regular basis throughout the year instead of waiting to the very end of the year to adjust everything. We also were concerned with the large number of non-branch staff that seem to be paid for by Measure Y funds. And so we'd like the Sonoma County Library to document their reasons for these particular employees that they're now paying with Measure Y funds. We've had difficulty with audits not being done in a timely manner. The audit for 2018 and 19 was just completed this year. So we would like to see them catch up with the next 2 years of auditing and bring us up to date. We're also concerned with the huge surplus that is being carried forward from year to year. So we'd like to see a plan for spending this surplus, and we'd like to see the implementation of that begin yesterday. So after careful review of all the expenditures, the committee decided that all of the capital expenditures and capital and other expenditures were appropriate Measure Y expenses, and we were comfortable with what had happened throughout this year. So are there any questions that you have for us that we could address? Oh, Andy has his hand up, but Andy's muted.
I was just waiting to be called on. Thank you.
Oh,
All right, I think what we should probably do is take public comment first. And then, because the next item on the agenda is to accept the Measure Y, perhaps we can have the commission conversation in that section, unless people really want to have it at the moment. I mean, it's just a sort of procedural problem, but
whatever works best for you. I'm fine.
Okay. All right, great. Then why don't I call for public comment? And Jen, I think you've got a couple.
I do. I have 2 written comments. The first is from Walt Fraser, a Measure Y committee member appointed by Commissioner Engbar. Before the commission approves the annual report of the Measure Y Oversight Committee, I'd like to point out a number of things not contained in the majority report of the committee. The current and proposed items listed below were not included in the expenditure plan or in a 12-page write-up entitled Writing the Next Chapter, Funding to Support Our Independent Library, submitted to the taxpayers in support of the ballot measure. The latter states, quote, revenue from the sales tax can only be spent on projects and goals listed in the expenditure plan, end quote. It then provides a 3-page detailed expenditure plan outlining all the ways the money will be spent. These do not include 1, funding a new deputy director position, which pays $156,000 annually, not including benefits, as well as an assistant. Funding for a centralized IP clock/PA system, over $100,000 of sales tax money. 3, a proposal to spend $600,000 per year in rent for a new administration office, not including the IT improvements, furnishings, etc., now being paid for by property tax income. 4, Measure Y funded positions also now include delivery drivers, human resources, graphics, maintenance, and marketing positions. At the September meeting of the Finance Committee, the one which discussed the misplaced $3.7 million, quote, Director Hammond described the procedure for allocating Measure Y funds in accordance with the language of the measure. Some categories are called out specifically in language direct, and others are in line with the intent of the measure, but not specifically mentioned, indirect, end quote. Again, the taxpayers were promised the money would be spent only on items spelled out in the expenditure plan. The Writing the Next Chapter document also says, quote, this modest proposal would include citizen oversight with strict accountability provisions and independent audits to ensure proper expenditure of funds as promised to the voters, end quote. I strongly feel that Measure Y calls for real oversight report, not just a marketing document. And I have one other comment. It was submitted by Tim May, who is our Measure Y Oversight Committee member appointed by Commissioner Heavenridge. I was appointed to the Measure Y Committee as the Petaluma representative sometime during the summer. Due to miscommunication, I was not involved in any of the meetings leading to the report being presented tonight. I have read the report and support the findings. I expect that I will be involved in the committee during the next year. And Deborah, you are muted.
Thank you very much. With no other public comments, we are going to move to item 5.1, which is to accept the Measure Y Oversight Committee annual report. And I believe we'll start out with some conversation. So Andy, Commissioner Elkin, would you like to continue?
Sure, I will. Thanks, Deborah. And first of all, Janice and Mike, I wanted to thank you and your committee for presenting to us tonight and for doing all this hard work, especially under the difficult circumstances that you described. I know that we've been without a CFO for a long time, and I can only imagine the additional burden that imposed on you and the Measure Y committee. So I want to thank you for laboring under those conditions. I also I appreciated the written report that was included in our packet along with the slides that you just showed us. And I I was happy to see on the conclusions page that, given the fact that you're looking at a fiscal year, that some of the things that you felt very strongly about were already in the process of accomplishing. So in particular, you called out the need for a CFO. And in fact, our new CFO, Myrna Lopez, did start November 1st. It's been great having her on board. And I expect that her presence will greatly facilitate the work of your committee going forward. I also have been very concerned about the lag in our audited financial reports. I was glad we finally got the 18-19 report a little while back. And my understanding is that we are on track to get the 19-20 and 2021 audits completed as scheduled by calendar year end, which would be great. So thank you for doing that. I had a couple of questions about specifics, and I'm just trying to educate myself a little bit as to the thought process that you and the other members of the committee went through. So two items in particular, and then I'll stop talking and let you answer. The first, you mentioned non-branch staff paid by Measure Y, and that you were looking for the library to document the reasons. I took that to mean that you didn't necessarily feel that it was inappropriate, but that you wanted to see a rationale that made sense in light of the language of the Measure Y proposal. Is that in fact what you're looking for?
Yes, it is.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. And then the other thing was just a small call out. This is on page 26. And I'll admit that I have personally struggled a little bit with the language around supplementing, not supplanting. But you had just a small note. You said, while Roseland is mentioned specifically in the Measure Y authorization, it appears that Measure Y is supplanting capital spending in other areas. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what was the approach or the analysis you went through that led you to conclude that it was supplanting rather than supplementing.
Okay, I'll take it if you like, Janice.
Yes, please, Mike.
Those were my words, and that we're now at 90% Measure Y funding for capital expenses and 10% for property tax. And so the concern is not, I don't know that it's inappropriate, but it certainly could raise questions in a public forum. So, we've gone down, so there's what, 200,000. If you go scroll on down, Jen, to the percentage of, or it shows percentage Measure Y and percentage property tax. There's another table, that table. So it's 91% of capital expenses now Measure Y, and it's when there is a surplus in both accounts. I mean, it's you can say it's not necessary because we have the money, but the question is it appropriate for Measure Y to be paying all the capital expense or most of the capital expense?
So a quick follow-up question, and because we're on the finance committee, we're also having some conversations where we're trying to look at this a little bit, Mike. Did you happen to, I understand that you're saying, gee, only $215,000 in capital expenses were paid by property tax. Did you happen to go back and look at, for example, 2016 before Measure Y was passed to see what was the level of capital expense at that time?
Right, and I don't have it right here in front of me. I do have a table where I've kept track of all of that. And we called this out one year in the past too, where it just seemed like, the property tax amount was going down and sales tax is going up, and it seemed like a concern.
Well, again, I'm not looking to dispute your finding. I just wanted to understand the thought process a little bit. So are you saying that, yes, as part of this analysis, you did look and say, hey, prior to the Measure Y passing, what was our level of capital expenditures at that point just on property tax?
Right, and the level, of course, we didn't have that kind of money before Measure Y. That the money wasn't available in either fund, and it was all in property tax. But there were times, I believe, when it was over 200. I'm not sure about that right now.
Well, we'll take a look at that. But thank you. I appreciate your clarification on that, and thanks again for the work of the committee.
Okay.
And thank you for your thoughtful questions.
Any other questions? I'm not seeing hands up. Commissioner Engbarth.
Yes, one is I wanted to support Andy's statement. I think you guys have done given all the circumstances, a great job on going through all of this. I wanted to underscore your statement about the surplus. There's a document that's put out by the Government Standards, Accounting Standards Committee that summarizes my feelings on the surplus money, and I don't know whether it does with yours, but it states, this is GASP number 1, it states underspending budget amount for a particular area when service levels fall below the expected levels might indicate that the public policy features of the budget were not adhered to. And I'm wondering if that comes close to touching on what your concerns are about the surplus.
I think our problem with this, I know my own personal concern is that when we reach the point where we have to go back to the public to renew the sales tax, the public's going to look at this surplus and go, you didn't use what we provided you before. Do we need to, refund at this same level again or at all? And I want to make sure that does not happen, because the funding is critical to the support of the library. We need to make sure that we provide the extra services that the public really wanted by passing this. We need to get those Sunday hours operational. We need to get back to the hours that we were originally had before COVID, and quickly, not 6 months from now, but soon. We need to get this back on track.
Thank you. And then one other thing, the commissions and the Finance Committee both have talked about the possibility of a joint committee meeting between the commission and your committee. I'm wondering how you guys feel about that possibility.
Commissioner Engbarth, I have talked to the chair about this, and I think we'll be talking about that a little later. So, so thanks for the question. But why don't we ask if other commissioners have specific questions about the report?
Commissioner McKenzie would like to say something.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, thank you. I think I could just speak barely enough. I third.
It hurts, Barbara.
Yeah, Janice heard me on another meeting this afternoon with the friends. I add my congratulations and thank you to the committee. I know there are a lot of obstacles that you went through, and always appreciate the work of volunteers, and the time that you spend. I had a question, but once I realized I couldn't talk, it went right out of my brain. So I'll come back to it if I can think about it. Sorry,
Okay.
It's hard to talk.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? I would certainly like to echo our thanks for your dedication to this. Things have been moving targets, and the information has not always been as clear as all of us might like. And as Commissioner Engbarth mentioned, we have talked at the commission level about possibly inviting a joint conversation, and I believe the chair agrees with me that this is a good idea. We'll probably hold it after the audits are in, so that's going to look like probably February. But I think that 5 years into 5 years into Measure Y, it's a terrific time to calibrate where we've been, where we're going, and really, because there are people who are on the commission who were not involved with the drafting of Measure Y, don't remember conversations at the time. And also there are people on the Oversight Committee who were not involved with that. I think it's a great time to take a look at the language and to see that we all agree on what it is that we're going to be looking at and how we're supposed to take a look. There are certainly plans, as the director will say, to open the libraries in the next fiscal year on Sundays. However, with Omicron coming, I think while all of us would like to have as many hours as we can, we want to be mindful that sometimes things are going to be taken out of our hands, and we won't be able to do some of the things that we want to do. That said, we can certainly try to budget for a positive outlook. So with that, and not seeing Barbara, is your hand up?
Commissioner Foxen has her hand up.
Commissioner Foxen.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for all you do, and want you to make aware the Cloverdale Library was the first library to be refreshed and kind of brought back into the world after Measure Y. And it was because of those Measure Y funds that they were available, that we were able to do that. And so when you talk about the percentages, I have some issues and some concerns, because it's Measure Y that's making some of this work on these buildings and the libraries that need to happen, the facilities, possible, because property taxes were not able to do it. So just something to put into your thinking and store away in your head as you talk about this. And Cloverdale is incredibly grateful for the work that was done due to Measure Y on its library.
Okay, seeing no more hands up, I'm going to, we're at 5-1, and so can I have a motion to accept Measure Y Oversight, the Measure Y Oversight Committee Annual Report?
So moved. I'll second. Paul Heavenridge.
Okay, Commissioner Hauser first, Commissioner Heavenridge second, and I will call the roll. Commissioner Cahill.
Yes.
Commissioner Elkin.
Yes.
Commissioner Engbarth. Commissioner Engbarth.
You're muted.
Yes, with reference to the statements by Mr. May and Mr. Fraser.
I'm sorry?
I said I vote yes, but with reference to the statements that we received from Mr. May and from Mr. Fraser.
Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but Commissioner Foxen.
Yes.
Commissioner Heavenridge.
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser.
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes.
I don't see Commissioner Mulford. Commissioner Parker, no. Commissioner Schneider.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to the Oversight Committee.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
We have several action items by resolution. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we've already taken the public comment. Okay, action items by resolution 6.1. We have to again take up the resolution that establishes a need to hold teleconference meetings due to the proclaimed state of emergency. So can I have
I'll
a
move the
motion?
resolution.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
second it.
the motion, Hauser.
Okay, Commissioner Cahill was the first and I was the second. And we'll just vote on that. Commissioner Cahill, you
Yes.
said yes. Commissioner Elkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Engbarth,
Yes.
Commissioner Foxen,
Yes.
Commissioner Heavenridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser,
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also. Okay. We are going to be talking about a budget adjustment for the IMLS Sonoma Phi grant matching funds. Director Hammond, do you want to walk us through this?
Sure. I believe we began discussing this last month. We have an opportunity for, we have received a matching grant through IMLS that gives us approximately $42,000, which will be matched with funds from the fund balance to supply this wonderful Sonoma Phi project. And if you'd like more information about that, I know we have Mike Daw and Erica Thibault, our deputy director, here tonight, and they can give you some detail. But it is something that we've talked about before, and we just need to make the budget adjustment so that we can build those funds into our current budget.
As you say, we've talked about it. I think that we can probably move forward unless there are some objections.
I move that we accept it.
I second.
And may I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Elkin. Commissioner Cahill,
Yes.
Commissioner Elkin said yes. Commissioner
Yes.
Engbarth said
Yes.
yes. Commissioner Heavenridge. Oops.
Yes.
Commissioner Foxen,
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser,
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes. And with appreciation to the staff for the work on this.
indeed, Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
and I'll make it unanimous today. Terrific. Our next resolution is to approve the appropriations limit for fiscal year 2020-21 and fiscal year 21-22. Would you like to say anything about that, Director Hammond?
I would like to invite CFO Lopez and Randy Seipel to give some information about that. If you would like to do that, please.
Yes. Good evening. So every year, the Sonoma County Library is required to establish its appropriation limit or its tax expenditure limit per state law. And the state controller sends to the Sonoma County Library the factors that go into calculating the appropriations limit. Those are the change in cost of living and population specific to Sonoma County. And due to the turnover in staff over the last couple of years, this had not been done for fiscal year 21 and 22. The county through Randy's team prepared the calculations for those fiscal years, and the calculations for both years showed that Sonoma County Library has been within its appropriations limit.
Chair Doyle, you're on mute.
Silly me. Any public comment on that? Hearing none. Any commission comments, questions?
I move approval to the of the appropriations limit for 2020, 21, and 21, 22.
Second.
I have a question. Tom Hauser.
Yes, Commissioner Hauser.
Question relates to, should this be done before the beginning of the fiscal year?
The information is sent to the library in May, and it should be adopted prior to the fiscal year. That's to ensure that when the commission adopts its annual budget for the following year, you're all in accordance to these requirements.
Let's make sure that it's on the June agenda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Hauser. Anybody else? Okay, then we have a move, we have a second, and let me call the roll. Commissioner Cahill,
Yes.
Commissioner Elkin,
Yes.
Commissioner Engbarth,
Yes.
Commissioner Foxen,
Yes.
Commissioner Heavenridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser,
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider. And I'll make it unanimous. Great, thank you. Okay. Down to library advisory boards, the foundation and friends of the library. Do we have Ms. Ortiz with us this evening?
You do indeed.
Welcome.
Hello. Thank you very much. I have a very short report. Mainly, I want to say thank you to anybody who participated in our Giving Day campaign. And I wanted to very briefly share our mailing campaign that will go out either this week or early next week. If any of you don't receive it and you wish to, please feel free to contact me. And if you give me your address, I will add you to our mailing list, or we'll have a lot of extras. I can drop them off at library headquarters, and anybody who's interested can pick them up there if you don't wish to share your address. So I'll make sure to drop them off at headquarters, and anybody can pick up as needed. Hold on one moment and I'll, oh, I can't share my screen yet, haha. One moment. So this will be going out to our donors, and I wanted to put emphasis on what does the foundation raise money for? We've been very interested in communicating more with our donors and letting them know where their money goes. And we really appreciate any financial reports we get from the library, of course, and any reports on where the money goes. But I wanted to share this with our donors, and I realize that many of you probably who are new to the commission or who haven't gotten these reports from us before may not know where the money is going. So this shows 2015 to 2020. It does not include 2021 because I don't have a full complete financial picture from 2021 yet. But over the last 5 years, donations have totaled $523,546.90. It's always funny when there's a cent. And you can see some of the things that we have donated to. Designated donations are just when people write a check for a specific branch and they go directly to that branch. And so we just pass them on to the library. Other things are specific to what the library has come to us asking for their needs. So things like collection enhancement, Spanish language materials, the Chromebooks, the Library of Things, and of course that money was reallocated to the Wi-Fi extensions, Hoopla for Student One card holders, the mini grant program, which we have paused since Measure Y funding has provided so many of those program funds that weren't there before. We have paused the mini grant program just because it seems like our monies could be allocated elsewhere to capital funding, but that was a program that we ran for several years. So I just wanted to share this with you and let you guys see this. I didn't go further back because I had this chart included 2014, but I won't lie, the number ended up being 666 and it was just really odd for me. And so I cut out 2014 entirely. But I'm happy to share a more bigger financial picture with anybody who's interested, or if you would like this chart, just please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to talk about any of these projects. I also wanted to briefly point out the Wi-Fi, and you guys know how important Wi-Fi is and why the library wanted to extend Wi-Fi from all the branches, but I just wanted to call this map out. This is a map showing the Federal Communications Commission estimated that 1.5 Californians do not have access to fast, affordable, and reliable broadband services at home. And this map, basically the yellow shows unserved areas, which is wild to think about. Look at our county and how many people don't have access to fast, reliable internet, and how important it is for the library to provide that service. Even in areas where you think that's a populated area, that must be well served, but it's not. And this shows how many of our neighbors truly value reliable access to Wi-Fi. So I just wanted to thank the library for making that happen and thank all of our donors for contributing to that project. That's it for me.
Thanks very much. Ms. Ortiz, have you met Craig Palmer, our new development manager?
I have not met him. We're Zooming tomorrow and I look forward to it.
Excellent. Excellent. And can we ask you, we're delighted, of course, with the report on your generosity to the library. How do you raise money?
We raise money through appeals, which go out in snail mail, and we're actually pretty effective with our existing donors and sending those out. And we also raise money through online, through email campaigns and through Facebook. I will say Facebook, very little. The people who donate through Facebook, it's much smaller. People through email campaigns who are our designated donors, they donate, pretty more regularly. And then through the mail is the bulk of our donations through asking. We also receive bequests, of course, from people who have passed away and left us in their will, which we really appreciate.
Is there a dollar range? Can you tell us approximately how much you raised last year, for example? If that's a tough question, I'm sorry.
No, last year was a bit of an anomaly because we had 2 large bequests come in. And so I think last year we raised, over $400,000, but that is a bit of an anomaly. I can get
including the bequests.
That includes the bequests, and we had 2 large bequests. So from our appeals, I would very ballpark $100,000.
Okay. Thank you very much for your report.
That's a very broad figure, but about $100,000 a year. And the bequests are entirely variable depending on what comes in.
Thanks very much. We appreciate your generosity.
Thank
Any
you.
question, Barbara? Commissioner McKenzie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I do. I wanted to commend Sarah for that detailed list. I love seeing by year and by, the specific things that the foundation is funded. I think it's really, really helpful document. And a small thing when you're mentioned no longer having the small grants. When I first started doing outreach for the library through the lab, I took my tablecloth down and we had a handmade sign about the library. And one of the small grants that came from the foundation, one of our librarians requested money and got money for a table covering. It says Sonoma County Library with the logo on it and a big canopy or umbrella over it. And it's been used so many times and it's been a wonderful use of small grant money. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you so much for all you're doing.
Thanks.
Commissioner Elkins. Thank you.
Commissioner Elkins.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you also, Sarah. I thought that was great. And I saw that what you were sharing came from your fall newsletter. And I was just looking online to see if I could download that. And I didn't find it. Could you, when you have a chance, please forward it to Jen so she can send it to each of the commissioners?
I will forward it to Jen and I will put it on the website tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the advanced copy. The advanced the advanced news that it's coming. We appreciate it. Anybody else? Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to library reports. Director Hammond, would you like to add anything to your library report or call some things out?
I would, yes, thank you. So I would like to call out, first of all, our excitement that we will be expanding hours very soon. Staff have been working hard on getting this ready. And we all know it's been a long journey since the beginning of the pandemic shutdown. We've been creeping back up to our pre-pandemic service levels, and we're still not quite there, but we're very, very close. So as of the beginning of January, we will add an additional 10 hours, 10 open hours per week at the branches and at Central Library. We're making a slight change to our evening hours. Previously, we were open Mondays and Tuesday evenings, and now we'll be open Tuesdays and Wednesdays because our our research and feedback showed that those were better evenings for students. So we're happy to make that change. And then, of course, we're looking forward to Sundays, as was called out in the Measure Y report. This has been a long time coming, and we feel that the time is now. We're about halfway through our Measure Y time period, and we've been doing a lot to prepare for this eventuality, even through the slowdowns of the environmental and public health extreme emergencies that we have faced. So we will be adding staff and making preparations to open Sundays at the regional branches in the new fiscal year. So next summer that's coming. And speaking of Measure Y, they called out the sizable surplus that we have. And I just wanted to mention that when Measure Y was passed, it took some time for the library to gear up, to hire the staff that were needed to start to implement some of the very ambitious goals that we had for Measure Y. And just as we were getting in place for everything to be happening there, that's when we went through 2 years of fires, overlapping 2 years of pandemic. So it's been very difficult. And that's one reason why we have a sizable surplus. But that surplus, we recognize that this is not money to sit on. This is money that was intended by the voters to make a difference in our community. And we have a lot of plans for that. We're currently gearing up for the capital projects at Guerneville and Petaluma and what was the other one? Cloverdale. We're doing some more work at Cloverdale, and that would be done with the bequest money that the foundation arranged for us. So a lot of projects that are currently planned, a lot of things that are going to be happening. We expect to have the comprehensive facilities report fairly early in the new year, and that will help us plan for the facilities needs of all of our locations, current and any future ones that we might want to add. So a lot of things happening in library land and a lot of things yet to come. And we're very excited for what the future will bring in 2022 and going forward.
Thanks, Director Hammond. I don't see any public comment. So I will ask the commissioners whether they have questions about your library reports or the news or the publicity, just because it's all in one group. And I believe Commissioner Hauser's hand went up first.
Yes, and I want to add, Anne, that we read in the newspapers how the public is being whipsawed back and forth. We're closed, we're open, you wear masks, you don't do this. I really think that the library staff has done an excellent job of gradually expanding so that people know when we're there, they learn, and we're not taking it away from them 2 months later. And I want to say that I think that's been a really well executed activity in a very difficult time. The other comment I have is that I don't see that we have anything in our report about our union negotiations, and we don't have a private meeting tonight. And I'm concerned that things are very slow. I understand that there hasn't been a meeting in the last few weeks because the union rep was on vacation. I'm not sure what was happening, but I'm just concerned about that. And I think that we need to try to move that along faster, although we can't do it without the other side helping. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Commissioner Elkind.
I agree with what Commissioner Hauser just said, and I too am concerned about the fact that we're not meeting for an update on the negotiations. But in addition to that, I have a quick comment and a question. Comment is under upcoming events, and I was really happy to see that there's a documentary film discussion on the film Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story, which is a very interesting film about a very interesting person. So glad to see the library's doing that. And forgive my ignorance of library work, but under collections, you said that you conducted a weeding training session and that the staff resumed weeding the closed stacks. Could you just say a little bit about what that is, please?
Sure. So in the library world, we're always managing our collections, and that means that we add new things, but we also remove items when they've lived their useful lifespan. So we have to do weeding, which is de-accessioning materials to make space for the new things that we bring in. And that's what staff have been involved in. So the closed stacks are in the basement of Central Library. And these are materials that have been kept for whatever reason, but they're not easily accessible or widely used. And so it was time to do a weeding project there to make some more space.
Mr. Engelbart.
Yes, I have a few questions. One of them was not a question, it's a statement. I'm glad to see that we're getting the hours back. I think that's really a great step forward. I'm a little concerned, though, keying off of what Chairperson Doyle brought up earlier about opening up the hours and then maybe having to just close them down again, depending on what happens with Omicron. And I'm wondering if starting the new hours at the beginning of the year, as things are still up in the air about the virus and the response to it, is a wise move. If we might just end up having to close them back down again, rather than waiting to see whether or not we are able to keep them open. That's my first question. That's
a very good observation, and we're staying in close contact with the county health department. So we're following their recommendations. Deputy Director Thibault is online, and she could give you some more information about that. Erica?
Sure. So the entire pandemic, one of the things that we have learned is how to stay safe, and, masking, having staff wearing masks, getting the vaccinations, washing our hands. These are the practices that have kept our staff safe. And we believe that as long as we continue following these health guidelines, that we should be okay, even with this newest variant. But as Director Hammond said, we are monitoring our county health department as well as our Cal OSHA guidelines, and we are consistent with their policies and practices. So any change they make, we will follow.
Okay, and another question I had was, I know that you've reached out to the labs and asked them for their input on the hours, but I'm wondering, has there been a meet and confer with the union regarding the expansion on the hours, the change to open them up?
Go ahead, Director Hammond.
I was going to say we've offered that opportunity to our union folks. And Erica, do you have anything scheduled yet?
We are going to be scheduling something probably this week.
Okay. And then the third question, this is part of it might just be still me getting used to my new role, but my observation has been every time that there's been a change in the hours, whether it's been to increase them or to decrease them, that it's been the past practice to come to the commission and actually make a presentation and get an approval of that as part of a motion. And I'm wondering what led you to not do that this time.
We have shared information with the commission regarding increasing hours in the past after we had the the initial shutdown, and then we were gradually able to bring staff back and to increase our hours and services. I don't recall us asking for permission. This was an operational decision that has not a financial impact at this point. When we add Sunday hours, of course, that's going to be definitely a financial impact, and we'll have to discuss that with the commission and get guidance in that regard. But for now, our understanding was that the commission, the priority was to get back to our pre-pandemic service level as quickly as possible in a safe manner. So that's the guidance that we've been following.
Indeed, we were looking forward to the restoration, so I don't think that I would have been surprised if you had come to us to say, yes, we really are going to restore the hours. But to clarify, I understand that you're thinking about Sunday, and we'll be talking about Sunday for the next fiscal year.
Mm-hmm. That's
okay.
true.
So it's not coming up. It's not coming up in the next couple of months, but we will be talking about it until then, and certainly through the budget process.
Right.
Okay, great. Any other commission questions? Great.
Commissioner Foxen has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Foxen.
That's okay.
I can't see your picture, so I'm looking at your name.
Oh, you can't see my picture? I can see my picture. Can anybody else see my picture?
No, I mean, I can see your
it.
picture,
Oh,
but
okay.
I was looking at the list of commissioner names, so that was over
okay.
your picture.
Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry. My memory is not the best anymore. However, I do not believe we've ever actually approved hours that the library is open and shut per se. We've discussed it, we've given our input, but I think that's an operations issue that we don't do as long as they stay within the budget of running it. So that's just my thought.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then.
I'm sorry,
would you
Commissioner
like-
Schneider has her hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Schneider.
That's okay. As usual, I'm a couple steps behind everybody.
You are not.
First of all, want to commend the library on its weeding project. When you look at the cost per square foot of building and maintaining library space, every square foot that has materials that are unneeded and unwanted by the user is an expensive proposition. And I also want to corroborate what Reese says. I believe early on in my orientation, we talked about, being the careful line between, providing, being in our commission work, if it's just a suitable substitute of hours with no financial impact, that is very much operational work for the library. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other hands? No. Okay, then we will move on to the financial reports. Is Randy going to walk us through those? Or Andy, are you going to?
Well, I would invite our new CFO, Myrna.
Oh my gosh, Myrna, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So up to date, these are the October financial reports. I think Randy Seipel is on. He presented these to the Finance Committee, and we've discussed them, and we have discussed transitioning, so where I would be presenting these on a regular basis, and starting with our mid-year review, which is the 6 months into the fiscal year, which ends December 31st. So that would also give us an eye towards the next fiscal year, definitely how we're going to end the current fiscal year, and give us some ideas and thoughts for our next fiscal year. But in terms of any detail, I wanted to invite Randy to go over the summary, and if you had any detailed questions.
Thanks very much.
Good evening. So for the October reports, not a lot different really happened during the month of October. Usually we take a look at the sales tax receipts. So again, per the report, we received 1.45 million in October. I can tell you that for the month of November, we just recently received another $1.2 million in receipts. And I just want to point out that's nothing to be concerned about when you see the drop from 1.4 in October to 1.2 in November. I took a look at last year, and in the month of November last year, we only received 940,000, and November apparently is the low watermark as far as our monthly receipts. So we are quite a bit ahead of that with the 1.2 million we did receive in November. Other items to point out, salaries and benefits, 2.2 million, 3 full pay periods were processed. We seem to be right on track with being up to date on processing the payroll. You'll notice that we've processed 34.4% of the total pay periods in the year, and we're quite a bit under the annual budget. We're at 25.4% now of the annual budget. However, 34% of the way through the year as far as pay periods processed. And then the other item to point out would be capital expenses. They dropped quite a bit in October, which is not altogether unexpected. We're only at 59,000. The bulk of those expenses were related to the facilities assessment plan. And other items that I would like to point out is that the commission approved a capital projects budget adjustment last month. That is not reflected in this report. It was not input into the county's accounting system by the end of October, so it is not reflected here. That adjustment will be reflected in next month's report. And as a reminder, that was approximately $3.6 million in additional capital project funding, along with an additional $400,000 in maintenance-related funding. And with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions.
I don't believe there's any public comments, so commissioners? Commissioner Engbarth.
Yes, I have 2 questions. I noticed that we're at 65% on the other consultants, and I would wonder if we could see a breakdown of an itemization of who or how much is being spent on the particular consultants that are that we're using right now that's coming up to that total.
That is a very timely question and request. We are actually incorporating a new tab in the monthly reports specifically for other contract services to provide the detail by vendor and amount and project. So that the next report that we see will have that information for you.
Great. The other question, I know this came up at the retreat, was around the billings for the legal expenses. I'm wondering if there's a way. I know that some of the billing statements have privileged information in them and will have to be separated from those that are not privileged, but would like to see if possible, so the commission can get at closed session, if necessary, a breakdown and itemization of the legal expenses as well. So we have the opportunity to review that.
Yes, you are correct. There are attorney-client confidential privileges that have to be adhered to. So I would leave that to Ann and Myrna to work with you on providing that information to you.
Commissioner Hammond, you have your hand up. Do you want to address that?
I was not going to address specifically the legal question, although Randy's point is a good one, that we'll have to figure out a way that we can present this information that is not in violation of attorney-client privilege. But regarding the other contract services, I just wanted to point out this is not necessarily consultants. These are contracts. So it would be things that we have on a maintenance basis or our ILS, different things that we have contracts for.
Yeah, I realize that, but that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to just know where the money's going.
Why don't we take that up in the Finance Committee? Thank you. Any other comments from the commission?
Commissioner
Okay.
Hauser?
Yes. I think what people are getting at is we've spent 65% of our budget in this one area already.
Mhm.
And this relates to something else that was brought up by the Measure Y committee is, should we be adjusting our budget mid-year because things are different than we thought? Now, I mean, this is not a major expense category for the library, but I think it is a good thing that we need to, at this time, almost halfway through the year, to look at whether we need to make some budget adjustments to realize that we weren't perfect in forecasting what would be happening.
Thanks. I also think sometimes we need a reminder, especially people who haven't gone through library cycles before, that some things are front loaded. Some things get paid for in the first of the year, and then some things get paid at the end of the year. And so sometimes it's a good reminder. It's a good learning experience to figure out how libraries pay their budget, pay their bills. Commissioner Elkin.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. It's in the Finance Committee report, but for those members of the commission who were not on the Finance Committee or weren't listening in, we did have a discussion specifically about this line item, and Director Hammond indicated that specifically because of the Group 4 project, the facilities master plan, that this category of expenses is significantly front loaded, and that when that work is done, there will not be a lot of additional expenses. And so we'll certainly look at it mid-year, but I think I left the meeting with the feeling that this is not an item that's going to need any kind of significant budget adjustment.
And Director Hammond, certainly if you thought that the budget needed a major adjustment in mid-year, you would be talking about it right now, wouldn't you?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, any other commission comments? Great. Let's see, the next on the agenda, commissioner reports. There aren't very many of them. Does anyone want to make a report? I understand it was an interesting month, and we had holidays. So if anybody wants to make an oral report, that's certainly delightful. We can also wait for your January reports. I'm not seeing any digital hands up. Okay, and my chair report stands as is. We move to the committee and liaison reports. Commissioner Elkin, Finance Committee, anything to add?
Nothing to add. As usual, I thought Jen did a fabulous job of capturing in significant detail the robust discussion that we had. I'm happy to answer any questions from the commissioners, but nothing to add.
Okay. And I should also ask if anybody had any questions about the commissioner reports or the chair report. But I haven't seen any hands up. And we have no public. Let's see. All right. So Measure Y Oversight Committee, that stands on its own. And Commissioner Schneider, do you have anything to add to your Historical Records Commission report?
No, I hope it is there, isn't it? Yes.
It is there.
No, that was a great meeting, and really excited to see the progress that we've made, but still miles to go before we something.
Thank you very much. Let's see. All right, down to the consent calendar, item number 10. Any questions on the committee and liaison reports? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent calendar. These matters include routine financial and administrative actions that may be approved by consensus. Any commissioner, member, or member of the public may request that an item be removed from the calendar and have it placed with the action items. The commission will approve the minutes of the prior meetings in summary format. Does anybody want to move anything out? I'm not seeing any hands up. So may I have a move to approve the consent calendar?
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Thanks, Commissioner
I'll second.
McKenzie. Speak. Who was the second?
I was, I think.
Okay, Commissioner
Oh,
Elkin, thank you
I
very
did.
much. All right, I'm going to take the roll. Everybody gets to say yes. Commissioner Cahill,
Yes.
Commissioner Elkin,
Yes.
Commissioner Engbarth,
Yes.
Commissioner Foxen,
Yes,
Commissioner Heavenridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser, Commissioner Hauser,
You're muted.
I'm muted. Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider,
yes.
and I'll make it unanimous. Wonderful. And then we are moving into item 11, discussions. And that is a follow-up. As you recall, it seems like yesterday, but a few months ago, we just extended the terms of certain lab members because there had been some confusion with when they were assigned and when their terms were supposed to be extended or they hadn't been given the option to decide. And so subsequently they have. So you see the report and you see that some of the labs are pretty small. Some of them have increased. It's an interesting question, but we wanted to make sure that you knew that the people that were on that list have been taken care of in one way or another. I think that the report, though, and the conversations that you've probably had with your labs kind of begs the question: how do we make the labs stronger? And because they were created by the original JPA and continued in the more recent JPA, and we seem to have difficulties recruiting people, and we seem to have difficulties recruiting people who are new to the library community, people who have experienced the library in a new way since the Measure Y funding, and so I think certainly we should probably look forward to having a conversation about what a new kind of a lab might look like, what a better organized lab might look like, what we could ask the partners that sign the JPA to think about in terms of how do we better serve the people of Sonoma County and its communities. Do we need labs? And so we're not having that conversation tonight, but I think we have to have that conversation, certainly in the next year or so, and try to. We don't want to waste people's time. People, we don't want to ask them to come to meetings that really aren't producing useful things, and we also want to make sure that we're listening to people whose voices we haven't heard before and who are using the library services for perhaps the first time. So with that, does anybody have any additional comments on the report about the labs? Yes, Commissioner Cahill.
Yes, I want to especially thank Jan for spotting this issue and doing the work to contact the people whose terms may have lapsed on June 30th. I'm disappointed that only 1 out of 8 decided to get reappointed, but that's what it is. So I don't know where we go, but I really appreciate the fact that she did the work on this.
Agreed. Thank you very much, Jen.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Engbar.
Commissioner Engbarth.
Yes, I just a footnote. Walt Fraser, I think, was the only one of the people in Sebastopol's lab that had not applied for reappointment, and he did on the weekend. And it was too late to get that on the agenda for this meeting, but it will be on the next commission meeting's agenda. A motion for his reappointment.
Okay. Let's see. I'm sorry, I've lost my. Okay, down to item 11.2, library computers and SEPA. Do you want Mike to walk us through this, or do you want to walk us through this?
I'm going to turn it over to Mike, but I just wanted to preface the discussion by saying this is it's a very important question. It's of great philosophical import as well as potentially financial import, and it's something that many libraries have struggled with. So I want everyone to have a chance to give meaningful input into this process. And Mike has a lot of very strong information to share with you. So I will let him do that, and then we can take it from there.
Hi, I'm Mike Daw. I'm the IT manager. I think I've met all of you on one course or another. I've been with the library since 2003. A lot has changed in that time, including my opinion on this topic. Technology and the time and era that we're in have dramatically impacted how SIPA is coordinated and maintained and technologically run for libraries. So I want to share my screen. My idea today is I want to just show you what I've been looking at, what we've been researching. And as Ann said, it is a big topic, and to clear up misconceptions, talk about some best practices, and also get your feedback about potential next steps in this process. So,
and Mike, could you just as you're going through this, some people don't know what SIPA is, don't know where we started. Say, let's talk about, I got involved in the conversation 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So people who are interested in intellectual freedom, they were in a certain space talking about this stuff. So I think you probably have to just assume you're starting kind of from the beginning. Give us a.
It's funny you should say that. That's the first thing on the topic.
Fabulous.
SIPA is actually the Children's Internet Protection Act. It was passed during the Clinton administration in 2000. And it was geared towards protecting children from, it's always odd. I'll be so glad, speaking of this era, when we can actually start meeting face to face. It feels so strange giving presentations on a screen. So I'm looking back and forth as trying to find out where you are all in regards to the things on the screen. So I apologize. Again, SIPA was passed in 2000 by the Clinton administration and enacted into law 2001. It was then put forth in 2003 to the Supreme Court, where it was upheld as something that schools and libraries would need to follow to be SIPA compliant. What it means is it was geared towards protecting children from inappropriate, obscene, pornographic material. Specifically, it was aimed at images. So this statement right here, harmful or obscene content over the course of the internet. It's broken into 3 parts. Of course, 3 parts is very few parts, but they encompass a lot of ground. So the first part is an internet safety policy, which any library or school that would be SIPA compliant needs to write and have as part of their policy cadre and also enforce. This would replace what we have now as our internet use policy. And we'll go over what each of these is. We also would need a technology safety measure, which is a filter, and public notice that we would be doing this process. This would be a part of that, one of many steps. So for the internet safety policy, safety statement, it's broken down in these 5 parts. It's protecting minors from imagery. It is, I should also say that this pornographic and obscene child pornography and obscenity is geared towards the next slide, but they are defined by federal law. As we have here, we're protecting them from internet access, or the World Wide Web, as they called it back when this was written, safety and security of minors, unauthorized access, illegal hacking, a disclosure of information, dissemination of information, and measures designated to restrict internet's access to that. This is done through the technology safety measure, in effect, the library filter. And it's really geared towards the visual depictions of these things. Again, obscenity and child pornography are actually the legal definitions as defined by federal law, whereas harmful to minors under 17, that is a community-based decision on those things. Now, with the filter, it has dramatically changed since 2000. In technology time, 20 years is a millennia. Back when this was put forth, these were software programs that you would install on individual computers by your staff walking through this building. And it could be as simple as a list of all these websites are blocked, or all these terms are blocked. And so much of it was, it would underblock or overblock because it was hard to gear towards images. And there would be information that was blocked for like sexuality, medical, all those types of things that were erroneously blocked because of the titles in their things. It's really only geared towards the imagery. Today, it's cloud computing. It is artificial intelligence, machine learning. It's done through proxy servers, so you control everything via a web-based GUI. It's built on categories. It is massive. It's the technical advancements in the past 20 years make it in a way that you have a lot more granularity and a lot more control without blocking the things that are important to those in our organizations. And then the public notice or meeting, that's just this. It's a publicly advertised meeting so that we can gather public feedback from you, the commission, and also the public, the people that we serve, about this subject prior to doing any of this. And that needs to be maintained in order to do that. And if we don't actually, if the organization does not, they need to keep records of all these things so they actually can be audited. Now, I should also mention, and I should have before now, SIPA is actually governed by the FCC. It's a civil matter, and it is then USAC, which is the Universal Services Administration Company, is their corporation, is the organization that actually does the administration of SIPA for organizations. The best practices are really, like with anything else, it's being transparent and making sure people understand what you're doing, what it is, providing a user-friendly way for people to bypass a filter. The only true mandate with SIPA compliance is that children's computers have a fully active, always on filter in a library system. Adults in the adult area, they have a way to bypass that. Moreover, it's not staff mediated bypass that it was back in the 2000s. These are ways that through the actual technology, a patron can be on a computer and choose whether or not they have this active filter. So really, we wouldn't be, staff wouldn't need to turn these things on or off. They also wouldn't need to bring over privacy screens or ask people not to view these things as they're currently doing. It's all maintained technologically. And it also has to enable a process for which people can choose to turn on or off a site. Say that I have a site that I know is completely valid, but somehow was blocked by the filter. It's the best practice in a library or organization's obligation to create a way for the person to provide a reason for that it shouldn't be blocked, or conversely, should be blocked, so that they have feedback, the public have feedback into the way the TPM is actually functioning for the library system. And then moreover, a personalized screen to let people know why these things were blocked, which is, it's very important so that they know why they're getting this message in the first place. So then we get to the point of misconceptions. I did mention this a little bit already. Filters are not mandatory, always on all public internet stations. That's our choice. That's the library or any library's choice. Many of the libraries that I've researched, they just have it on all the time. NYPL would be an example of that. San Diego would be another example of that. You can actually turn these things on or off as you go. SIPA does not track individual use. It's all about just maintaining. Sorry, phone. And then I had the last people in the building just letting me know they were leaving. I apologize. Doesn't block individuals' use of the internet. It's about just blocking the categories that we've set forth. It might be as little as pornography, cyberbullying, and online gambling is another one. It's Cisco Umbrella is one of the big players in the game, and we're a Cisco shop. That would be one of the ones that I'm actually interested in shopping for. And it's all web-based. You choose the categories that you want, and then you can also turn off your phone so it doesn't ding. Make edits as needed. It doesn't block controversial ideas or political thoughts. It doesn't block text nor audio. And it also doesn't block social media, Facebook, or YouTube. So people will have access to those types of materials as they so need. Moreover, it only applies to library computers. Therefore, if somebody was using our Wi-Fi, their devices do not get blocked. And that's important to note because Wi-Fi use of our libraries has exploded and they're using their own devices. And so this wouldn't even apply to them. Now, must the library comply? The short answer is no. However, should it? For example, we talked about funding that Ann mentioned, which is not inconsiderable. So we currently get E-rate funding for Category 1 data connections, or fiber lines between the buildings. We could get Category 1 for internet access, which is a medium bump. It would be a nice reimbursement. Category 2 funding potential for E-rate, if we were SIPA compliant in fiscal year 21, was $900,000. We were just talking about Measure Y and spending potential and what should and shouldn't be considered as part of our funding for Measure Y or property tax, quite frankly. I work in IT. The stuff that we need is quite expensive. We're 5 years just about into our forklift overhaul of our network infrastructure, routers, switches, all the hardware that makes us run. We're the glue that holds the place that keeps the information flowing. Those are going to need to be replaced sometime, as well as any hardware or software related to installing this, such as the Cisco Umbrella. Those things are all potentially fundable by E-rate if we were SIPA compliant. Also, we are continually ineligible for LSTA grants, Library Services and Technology Act, where we could get mobile devices, computers, equipment for grant funding programs, because all of those are SIPA mandated grants, and we have to pass those up. And those are all talking about funding. Apart from that, we can talk about the human aspect of it. I have a 3-year-old at home. I don't think that having the children's computers with a filter on them is necessarily a bad thing. That's my opinion. One thing that's not, though, is that, and it's not on the slide either, is that there's a perk with cybersecurity. We get things from commissioners, staff, and public alike about websites pointing me towards other things, trying to take my personal information, ransomware, malware, all those things. Cisco Umbrella and similar technologies would block access to those. So in effect, we'd actually be a safer environment for our computer systems. But we're not alone. Sonoma County is a great place. And again, I've been here for a long time. We're also fairly conservative in our decision making. We're not alone, and there are our neighbors, as well as big libraries that have already made this decision. Contra Costa, Ventura County, San Benedito County. I got these from a consultant. LAPL, Erica's previous home, they're going before their board this week seeking final approval to go SIPA compliant. Other library systems have been around for a lot longer than that. LA County, Stockton, San Joaquin, San Diego, Hayward, San Joaquin Valley. King County Library System is a huge library system of much notoriety in Washington State that's been SIPA compliant since the 90s. I talked to their IT operations manager just about a week ago. They've been using the Cisco products. When they upgrade, they're going to be upgrading to Cisco Umbrella. They're an organization that I would listen to about making decisions. Queensboro Public Library is also Cisco compliant. That's a good one. If you want to look at their internet safety policy, that one is very nicely written. I looked at that just the other day. And hot off the presses, we'll email this to you after the meeting. Just today, we were notified of a CLA presentation that's happening this week that is going to give further information about making Cisco or SIPA compliance attainable. And they're going to say it a lot better than I did today. And if you have time, as we are having these discussions, it might be worth your time to watch this presentation. Myself, I will be right here sitting there watching that presentation on that day. So I talked pretty fast and I flew through a lot of things, and hopefully I didn't stumble around too much. But the reason we're here is to get your feedback and hear your questions. I see some hands up. So David.
No, Commissioner Daw, I'm going to take privilege of the chair and ask a question first.
Please.
So why is this coming up now?
It's been an issue that's come up for several years now. When my predecessor, Vicki, was here, she brought it up to me and we talked about it. I know she's talked about it with some of you as well. In the past year, in doing two of the roles, I honestly didn't have the mental space or the time to do it. And E-rate funding time is coming up this spring. So it's timely to do that, to have this conversation so that we can start the process and start making use of the funds if we go that direction.
All right. And you're aware that we have a library policy that, a number of years ago, the library looked at this and decided that that they did not want filters. So I'm aware that you're opening the conversation here, and I don't think that there's anybody on the commission that does not support intellectual freedom strongly. So this is probably going to be a robust conversation. I'm going to start off with Commissioner Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Doyle. So I did want to note that it is possible to get state library grants, even if you are not SEPA compliant, because I have one. And it was simply that what I was acquiring through the grant had nothing to do with computers connected to the internet. It's for a makerspace, interestingly enough. And so a couple of thoughts. I agree, Mike, that it's been a long time since filtering first came up. I know because I wrote the textbook on the topic in the late 90s and testified in a First Amendment case about this. And I don't trust 20-year-old information. So I frankly turned to people I know in the field who are experts who said actually that there may be some questions about how filters function that are not quite as sunny as it seems to have been in the presentation. But I wanted to ask if you were aware that the library will need to provide reasonable public notice and hold at least one public hearing to address the proposed internet safety policy, which could be interesting. And also, if the other commissioners were aware that the American Library Association has a very clear interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights about internet filtering that raises questions. So those are just several points that I wanted to make. Obviously, I'd be curious to know what products you're thinking of using. And again, I was also curious why now, but Chair Doyle asked that question. Thank you.
Yeah. I missed the second point that I had. Your question. Yeah, why now is, again, that I'm having the mental space to start doing it, and the timing for E-rate funding is coming up. Yeah, I do want to look into to see how filters are working better, and that's why we use the Cisco has come up in a lot of my research, and that's one of the ones that I'm primarily going to be working on. Palo Alto is another product that we can look at, and there's many others. So,
Commissioner Cahill?
Yes, a couple of questions. First of all, I would like to have us sent the official text of the ALA policy on this. And Karen, you mentioned it colloquially. I'd like to have the exact text of the Intellectual Bill of Rights and how it applies to filtering as it now stands. Secondly, roughly what fraction of California libraries are not SIPA compliant right now? And I'm simply not interested in what Washington State or other public libraries do. How many are not compliant? So I guess those are two main things. I'm concerned about getting the camel's nose under the tent, frankly. So.
Okay. I don't have the percentage that aren't, but I can work on that.
Thanks.
Great, thanks. Commissioner Elkins.
Mike, I wanted to thank you, first of all, for doing this. I found it very interesting. I'm kind of new to this topic, so I'm going to play back what I think I heard or read between the lines and just ask if you could confirm that. Seems like there are potentially substantial dollars available to us if we were to become SIPA compliant. And so I think, and everybody I think that gets our attention. I think we're interested in that. And then the question hinges on, can we do this in a way that's consistent with our commitment to intellectual freedom and freedom of information? What I think I'm hearing you say is that we've come a long way over the 20 years plus since this was first introduced. And I think back to, I think it was 1997, my family and I were planning a trip to Italy, and we were starting to search on the internet. And back in those days, you could search for hotels in Florence, and it would take you to a pornography site. I mean, there was, the search engines were really not very well tuned, and people were using, I guess, hidden codes to draw traffic. Clearly, we've come a long, long way. And so what I heard you say is, first of all, that the filtering is, there are some things it doesn't apply to at all. People who have their own devices and are on the library Wi-Fi are not subject to this. And there's also kind of an opt-out provision available if, as an adult, I'm searching for a legitimate site which somehow gets filtered out. I have the ability to basically override that and get to it. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. For filtering would mandatorily be turned on for children's internet computers. On adult stations, the idea is they would be able to select whether they want a filtered or unfiltered session. And it does not apply to Wi-Fi because that is their personal devices, which is being served via internet access.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna stop talking, but I understand that the ALA has some language on this. Like Commissioner Cahill, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see specifically what it says with regard to children. And I appreciate you bringing this up, because I personally would like to find a way to do this, if we can, that does not curtail reasonable freedom in terms of access to information for adults, but does provide some measure of protection for kids. I think that's a reasonable goal. Thank you, Mike.
Commissioner Ingbar.
Yes, Mike, I wanted to thank you for pulling this information together, plus the information that Director Hammond had attached to her email to the commissioners. That was a lot of good information to start with, and your overview certainly is providing everybody some food for thought on all of this. My own view on this is just an opening of a longer, what could be a longer and a more detailed discussion that would also require some education from you and from other people of the commissioners and commission on just the ins and outs of SEPA. And I think the ALA's position, which is pretty well established and pretty well documented on their website, would be good to have that information available. I think also what would be good in the conversation would be to have available more specifics about the dollars and cents of this. So if we're talking about money, I think to talk about it in a general sense isn't as helpful as being able to see it in more detail, which again, I don't feel that this presentation of yours was designed to provide. So I wouldn't be, necessarily holding that as an expectation today. And I think getting some information from the libraries that are not SIPA compliant would be helpful. For example, I know the San Jose Public Library has had ongoing issues around SIPA compliance, and it's my understanding that they're not SIPA compliant right now. I don't know where they are as far as getting compliant. Also, the public library system in Hawaii, from what I understand, is not compliant to SIPA. So I think library systems some library systems have chosen to comply with SIPA, others haven't. And I think it would be good to get a perspective from both to be able to see just what the thought processes were. And then going back to something that Chairman Doyle mentioned, that at the time that the library was forming its internet policy, the grand jury was looking into SIPA and our compliance with the internet filtering, and the commission at that point wrote a pretty detailed response to the grand jury about why it is that they decided not to vote in favor of the filtering. And I think that would be a document that would be worth spending some time looking at and asking the question that's been asked is, why now? What's changed from the library's position when this was researched and responded to before? I give my final points. One that's come up from other commissioners is the really has the ALA, given the fact that the technology has changed, has the ALA changed its position on compliance with SIPA? The short time I had to prepare for today, I couldn't find anything that indicated that they made any major changes in light of the changes of technology to their positions on this. And I think it would be worthwhile to be able to take a look, as I mentioned earlier, to take a look at what their position statement is and what their feeling is about the compliance with SIPA. So that's all I have today. Thanks.
I don't think there was a question there, right?
No, I want to thank
Okay.
Mike. The other thing would be on the public meetings. I think that it's a good opportunity to pick up what you said earlier. This would be a meaty subject, I think, for the labs to address and get the local input on. And I think it would be worthwhile to involve the labs in this process very early on so that they have the opportunity to go out and seek community input in this.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, the first time I ever heard of SIPA was 2 years ago when we were doing the COVID, when we were in COVID and panicking about income, and Vicki Turbovich did bring up this idea, and then we kind of, I guess, put it aside. One of my concerns would be how contentious our society is right now, and how everything is controversial, and things can be misunderstood, and all the stuff that I'm sure you library professionals have been through when this was initially brought up, and how we would do a public campaign, education campaign, if that's how we would go, to make sure people, what we were doing with this and how specifically and how targeted it could be and so forth. And I could just see it being just so, misunderstood. So I'm sure many of those of you who have been through this as professionals know a lot more about this than I do, but that's just something that would really concern me. I had written down the same comments about really wanting to know the specifics of ALA's position, and also a ballpark financial number about how great an impact this would be to us. I think that would be really important to know. But that would be my concern, would be about how to deal with this with the public and not have it be misunderstood. So I think it's a great conversation to have. Obviously, we have long farther to go with this. Appreciate bringing it up, Mike, and your information.
It's like doing away with fines. I think that there are a lot of people who are very, and this is even frankly more important in terms of the information that people can acquire at the library. And so you have us listening. I'm not sure that we're necessarily persuaded yet. And I'm aware that funding, there's some major funding that we're not eligible for if we're not SIPA compliant, but SIPA compliant. And a number of libraries in Northern California have had these conversations. San Francisco is not compliant, and this is the reason why. And we have a lot of folks who are very committed to intellectual freedom and to making sure, when you say someone can turn the filters on, an adult can turn the filters on, turn the filters off. That's harder for some people than it is for, say, an IT professional to do. And if someone's in the library to look for something, it's then we'll need to teach them how to do that. So so as Barbara says, this is the beginning of a one hopes not a too long a conversation, but it's we hear what you're saying, and we know that there are some things that we could take advantage of if we were compliant. But the burden benefit analysis, we need to do some more work on that, I think, and we appreciate you bringing it to us, and we feel certain that there are some grant deadlines that you've got your eye on. So as quickly as we can digest some information, the better for all of us, I think. But I think that as the commission has said, it's not just us. This is a community conversation. All right, I don't see any additional hands up, and naturally I've put my agenda down. Okay. One last call for any additional comments on that. Barbara, your hand is up, but I think that's just from before. Okay. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Much appreciated.
Yes, I know it's a big subject.
Okay. Future agenda items. We've talked about the union. I think that that's probably an important thing to have on a future agenda. And I will say we approved our schedule for the next few months, but that we also are going to schedule the conversation with the Oversight Committee, and we're also going to have a special meeting about finance and all of the demands on our budget. And then I think that because we have the library has some things in mind in terms of development, I think that we're going to try to schedule a special meeting, lots of special meetings this year, on development and advocacy, on fundraising and development, and what that means for the library, and what that means for the Library Commission. So trying to get those dates scheduled. We probably won't be able to do that until either the audits are done. That's certainly for the finance one, but perhaps we can get the other two scheduled. Anybody else have additional agenda items? Commissioner McKenzie, is your hand still up, or?
It's newly up. Yes.
It's newly up. All right.
I have one item. This afternoon, I attended the homelessness roundtable here in Roanoke Park, which I kind of regular attendee to that. And we also have one of our librarians for Roanoke Park branch attended. But there was a presentation by Don Schwartz, who is our assistant city manager, on something called the Continuum of Care Board. And that is a group that deals with policy on the homeless, and including financial decisions on allocating funds. There's a new board that's going to be newly formulated board that's going to go into effect in March. And they're really trying to kind of change the way they've done it in the past. Right now, there are dedicated seats that include the mayor of Santa Rosa and some other folks. Anyway, they're really looking for people to apply to this. And Don, because of course he knows about our association with the library, brought up the library, excuse me, as a specific potential member of this board. And I just would request that our staff, and I'd be happy to talk offline about this, that our staff look into whether the Sonoma County Library would be a good member of this board. We obviously have a lot of impacts from homelessness. And I don't know about the appropriateness of being on the voting board that votes on allocation of dollars, but you can also be a member and not be on the voting board. So I think it is something that's within our area of concern. And again, because Don, who knows the library well, pointed us out as a potential really good member to be on this board, I'd like staff to research it. And again, I'm happy to talk to Ann or Erica, whoever might want to take this up. But I'd like to agendize it because of the possible appropriateness of us already being a commission, serving on a county commission. So I hope that
I tell you
wasn't too
what.
confusing.
Right. I would recommend that you have the conversation with Anne and Erica, and if they think it's appropriate to bring it to the commission, or if they have a different solution, whether they would rather be a partner as opposed to a member, and then bring it back to the commission if that seems appropriate. How about that?
That'd be fine.
Okay, great. Any other items? Golly, seeing none, then I'm going to wish everybody a happy holiday and ask for a move to adjourn at 8:02.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Cahill. Thank you, Commissioner Elkin. And I'm just going to assume that that's a unanimous.
That's good.
Does anybody have any objections to that?
No, just happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thanks so much. Talk soon.
Carry on.
Bye-bye.
See you next year.
Uh-huh. Well, at the Finance Committee meeting. Bye, everybody.
See the rest of all your commissioners next year.
Thanks, Commissioner Heavenridge. Thanks, Jen.